Sam, you
Ready to go?
you ready? Okay. I call the Charlottesville City Council February 3rd, 2025 meeting to order. Ms. Thomas, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Oshrin
Here.
and Councilor Payne will not be with us today. Vice Mayor Pinkston,
Here.
Mayor Wade,
Here. Having established a physical quorum, City Council will now consider a request from Councilor Snook to participate electronically. Councilor Snook, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am. Are you able to hear me?
Are participants in the audience able to hear Councilor Snook?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Snook, for the record, would you please specify your reason for electronic participation and your remote location?
I am in Ypsilanti, Michigan, visiting family.
Based on compliance with the policy, is there a motion regarding electronic participation?
So moved. I move that we allow Councilor Snook to participate remotely.
Second.
All in favor, please vote. The motion passes 3-0. The meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first is a work session where we will hear and discuss presentations that do not require the council vote, followed by a closed session, and then city council business meeting at 6:30. And the reports of the first one is Misty Graves and Chief Koches will report on Project Safe Neighborhoods.
She's not off and wrong.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. This afternoon, we will be giving you an update on the progress of the Community Safety Working Group and the Project Safe Neighborhoods, in hopes that you all feel up to speed, updated, and that you can go on to become ambassadors for the good work that this region is doing towards improving community safety. All right, as background, the President's Council on UVA Community Partnerships was created in the fall of 2019. They also have working groups that are dedicated to things like affordable housing and early childhood education. And in November 2022, 3 UVA football players were shot and killed on campus. And at that time, additionally, the rate of violent crime in Charlottesville had increased by 30% from 21 to 22. So in the spring of 2023, UVA President Ryan worked with the city manager's office and Albemarle County leadership to create a 6th working group that's focused on community safety and working on that approach to be holistic, and it included over 20 members from the community, including city staff, nonprofits, community members, community leaders, and folks from the Equity Center who are in the audience here as well. So the first activities starting in March were really to look at the data, what's really currently happening in Charlottesville and Albemarle and the UVA campus. We also, in addition to looking at data, we looked at current research around reducing gun violence and increasing community safety. We talked to experts in the field. We also engaged presentations from other nonprofit partners. And over that course of that, spring into late summer, the group came up with four overarching goals. And each goal had several recommendations that fit underneath it. So goal 1 is create protective community environments. Goal 2 is enhance place-based programming and access to care. Goal 3, improve coordination and information flow amongst community members, service providers, school, and law enforcement. And goal 4 is to connect youth to caring adults and activities. The full report was published in September 2023. It's on the Equity Center website and the President's Council website. So you can see all of the recommendations that the group put together. And then after that full report was completed, we looked and said, okay, well, there's a slew of recommendations that have been vetted, but how do we move this working group report into implementation. And so at that point, there was an implementation group. So the Community Safety Implementation Group is a smaller group that's from the city, from Albemarle County, and the University of Virginia. So the two representatives that Sam had appointed to that implementation group are myself and Chief Kachis. From Albemarle County, the two appointees there are Kaki Demick and Chief Reeves. And from the university, it's Chief Longo and some folks from the university. And we also have backbone and sort of structure and program management from our partners at the UVA Equity Center. So this smaller group was charged with analyzing the large documents, over 20 pages, and prioritizing them and putting them in sort of manageable action items. We also in that time decided on 3 community metrics because we want to be accountable to our community members and to the work of the group. And so the 3 safety metrics that were selected were number of injuries from gun violence in the region, number of deaths from gun violence, and the rate of chronic absenteeism in Charlottesville City and Albemarle County schools. So from that time, we've slowly been chipping away. There are current things that are happening ongoing in the community that are sort of progress towards those 4 overarching goals. For example, the UVA Equity Center hired a data analyst that supports the community safety working group efforts. And there's also ongoing support for the Seville Alba Youth.org resource for youth opportunities. That website is designed to be sort of an all-encompassing place where community members and parents and caregivers can go to see what are the nonprofits, what can kids do in the community, and make sure they're up to speed on what opportunities are available. As you know, Anchor launched in July of this year. HEART has been going on for 1.5 years, and that's ongoing. That's increasing the mental health supports to folks to increase safety in the community from that avenue. We've also implemented Youth Lead, which is the pre-arrest youth diversion program for city residents. We've had a number of roundtables that foster two-way communication with our partners and community residents. So on January 21st, we had a press conference that sort of let the community know about one of the initiatives of the Community Safety Implementation Group called Project Safe Neighborhood. And then on the 28th, the group hosted a community dialogue on community safety. And so one of the major focuses of the group's work right now is full implementation of Project Safe Neighborhood. And Kyle Irvin from the communication department came up with a promo video to give you an overview of where we are with Project Safe Neighborhood.
We're pleased to have you here for this important time. This time is a moment that represents over 1 year of hard work and collaboration between the City of Charlottesville, the County of Albemarle, and the University of Virginia.
Yeah, Project Safe Neighborhood, simply put, is a designation by the U.S. Attorney's Office that really supports regional collaboration around the issue of community safety. And one of the things that my organization, as the Equity Center at UVA, as well as the President's Council on Community Partnerships, what we look at is how to coalesce and build a coalition around the partners regionally that are addressing this issue, with the primary focus on community advocacy groups, community nonprofits, local law enforcement, as well as regional partners in our local government, such as human services that provide services to individuals. Really what we look at during this organization and during this sort of process is how do we call individuals in order to provide them holistic support as an alternative path down this road that impacts our community with unsafe activity as well as issues that plague our region.
Yeah, so I serve in 2 roles. I serve on President's Council, and I also work for Albemarle County Public Schools. This is just one of those initiatives that has been able to partner and bring in all of the partners that need to be there because, you know, we're a small city and a small location.
The Department of Human Services is part of the Project Safe Neighborhood project by leveraging our community partnerships and using our partners in the community that serve youth, that serve adults in the community who need some supportive services to get on the right track. So Our role is to make sure that we have everyone at the table, because this is a collaborative effort, because in order for this project to work, we need to be connecting to other strengths and assets in the community, because we can't do it alone.
We're asking everyone to join hands and join forces to try to provide services to people who need them, and also accountability for people who need that. We think by joining forces together, we're going to make a big difference around how this community feels and how people get their needs met. One of the things I can help do is try to talk about all the sources of funding that might contribute to this project, both from local government, federal government, and local grants, private grants as well, to try to help leverage as many resources in our regional approach as we can.
You know, UVA is the community. We're a critical piece of the Charlottesville-Albemarle area, and what I think most excites me about this project is the opportunity to work closely with my colleagues in the city, in the county, and the United States Attorney's Office to really make a positive and meaningful impact on violent crime. Violent crime knows no boundaries. It has no idea where the lines between city and county and universities may intersect. And so it's important to approach this issue in a collaborative way, and I'm proud that the university has stepped up to the plate to be a critical partner to this program.
Well, so first of all, one of the things we're doing now is identifying those prolific offenders that continue to prey on our community. It's a very small group of folks. Through a focused deterrence model, we're using that to identify these individuals and then do call-ins to see what kind of services they may need, to hopefully put them on a different path to where they're currently going.
It's not just about enforcement action, it's about taking opportunities to reach those who are at risk for conducting criminal violence. So this is a great opportunity to do some preventive work on the front end with our community partners to make our community a much safer place.
So just to recap some of the topics that were covered in the video, Project Safe Neighborhood is a Department of Justice program that is a nationwide initiative that has been successful in other localities. It brings together federal, state, and local law enforcement officials, prosecutors, community organizations, and other stakeholders to help identify and address violent crime problems. There are 4 pillars to Project Safe Neighborhood: community engagement, prevention and intervention, strategic enforcement, and accountability. And I'll just kind of give you a little bit more information on each of those pillars and how it's starting to shape up here in Charlottesville. So community engagement, this meeting is another opportunity to engage with the community. We want to make sure that the community is informed of what Project Safe Neighborhood is, why is it here, its purpose, and some of its components. So we want to make sure that we are being transparent, we're sharing information, we're also inviting feedback like we had on the 28th, the community dialogue. What is it that people want to see happening in our community to improve community safety? And we want to make sure that we're utilizing diverse methods of communication. So whether it's a press release, whether it's meetings like this, town halls, the community walks that the police department does. So that's community engagement, making sure folks have buy-in, have a way to contribute to the rollout. Prevention, working with youth-serving organizations so that they can have some increased capacity to build resilience, and so they don't even end up on the radar of Project Safe Neighborhood strategic enforcement, which we'll talk about later. We want to make sure that we're checking in with youth and tailor those programming and resources to their current needs. One of the things that we heard at the community dialogue last week, we heard from a young person who had talked about hearing again and again that teens and young folks want a non-programmed safe space to hang out in, like a mall, and that wanting to have a place where they can connect, where they don't necessarily have to do a sports team to be engaged, but they can have a safe place where they can have a good time and connect and know that they're safe. Intervention, so one component of this that Chief Koch just mentioned in the videos are call-in meetings. This is an opportunity to provide individual attention to and encourage those individuals to take a different path. So it requires basically calling folks in. There is a list that has data and metrics that are very subjective, objective, and they make sure that there is a metric in place that can identify the folks that are at highest risk for committing violent crime and the most in need. And so we bring those in, and we'll have providers, we'll have facilitators that are sort of restorative in nature, and we'll be able to sort of talk with the individual about what would it take to encourage them to take a different path. And there will be a law enforcement presence there to kind of talk about what might happen if they continue down the path that they're currently on. And then the last component is accountability. So we're accountable to the residents we serve. That's why we have community safety metrics that the UVA Equity Center's data analysts will make sure that we're up to speed on, and the community engagement. That doesn't just drop off. That's not a checkbox. So we're going to be having opportunities for the community to keep us honest about what we say that we're going to do. And I've been really enjoying the collaboration, the partnerships that we've built over the last year and almost 2 years now, and just grateful that I've been involved in gaining momentum. It's very humbling because you're balancing the urgency of people that you meet out in the community that want a resolution, they want it now, people are hurting, with that we want to do it right, that we want to make sure that people are informed, and we want to make sure that we're getting the right kind of feedback. And we want to make sure that if someone asks for a service, we have that service to give. So we want to make sure that we're filling those gaps as well. So thank you for letting me sort of update you on Project Safe Neighborhood. It's here, it's getting ready to launch. Obviously, Chief Patches, if he wants to have some follow-up remarks to add to what we've been doing.
I think you covered it well, Misty. Just this is how it's supposed to work. I mean, the collaboration, the meeting we had the other night, the dialogue, it was packed, and these were folks from the community. It was just an awesome conversation. Folks who have been traumatized by gun violence, and so yeah, this is an all of the above approach, and I think that's what it's going to take to get our arms around this issue.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know that in times past, you've given us updates in terms of the crime rate and incidents. I don't remember the last time that you've done that, but it seems sort of my subjective feeling of things is that things are on a better path than they had been. Does the data back that up?
It does, and we'll be pushing out our annual report here in the next month or so. But and I've put some numbers out there at the town halls. Like, so part one, you saw there, what was it, 21 to 22, 30% increase in violent crime. Last year, we had a 10% decrease in part one crime, which are our most serious crime. Homicides were down 76% last year. And so the numbers are good, right? But they're not zero. And so, we just had a young man killed the other night. That's, so I think there's something to be said about those metrics and that data that I think is important. But a program like this also takes into account the trauma of the folks in the 900 block of Page Street the other night that were house and cars were shot up 45 times.
Yeah.
So the numbers are important. They're a metric, they're a goal. But I think this is more than just numbers. Seeing that dialogue the other night there are people that really want to get to the root of a lot of this stuff.
So the Project Safe Neighborhoods, what is it? My observation is that you and Chief Longo and Chief Reeves, you all are working hand in glove all the time anyway.
Daily.
Yeah. What does Project Safe Neighborhoods sort of add on top of that might not have happened otherwise?
A framework and resources from the focused deterrence piece of it, from the strategic enforcement piece of it. It gives us resources at the federal level that we don't have at the state level. I'm hoping we don't have to use any of those resources.
Resources in terms of like money?
Federal grand juries, money.
I see.
Enforcement type stuff. I'm hoping we don't have to go use any of them. It'd be great not to.
I see.
And that's where I think these call-ins are going to be of value. I mean, these are voluntary call-ins, but these are the young individuals.
Have you had any of those so far, Chief? I mean, have you already?
We hope to be pushing that out here shortly, right?
Okay.
The call-ins. That's why we did the press conference to kind of notify folks.
I see.
We did a community dialogue. We've identified facilitators, and now next step is to start doing it.
I see.
It's taken a while to make sure that we had the capacity. One thing we didn't want to do is call someone in and they say, hey, what do you need? And they say, hey, I need job training, I need this, I need that. Oh, and we don't have it.
I see.
So we wanted to make sure that we had the capacity to actually do what we say we were going to do.
In Project Safe Neighborhoods, in other places in the country, is the same model of identifying a high-risk person and bringing them in and.
Similar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sort
they're
of
similar.
Put them on the spot and say, you can go this way or you can go that way. Choose wisely.
Yeah, that's basically what we're saying. Yeah, there's models out there. Danville is a Project Safe Neighborhoods community, the city of Roanoke is. It's been around a long time through different administrations on whether both Republican and Democrat administrations. It's continued. And so, but it's what I think is interesting for us, it's really unique to our community. You know, we've really kind of molded it to what we need within this community. So,
good. Thank you.
yeah.
I think we also got some support from the UVA Law Clinic students to do some research on best practice and how folks are rolling out Project Safe Neighborhood. So we really have coalesced like all of the recommendations from best practice into how can we incorporate it here locally. And I think it is that community engagement piece and that continued dialogue that sort of sets us apart, and the attention there and the buy-in to that.
Got it. Thank you.
Lloyd, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, a couple of questions. A couple of years ago, when we were seeing this increase in violent crime, and we did a lot of talking about it, we were talking about the sources or the causes of violent crime as falling into a few categories, some of which we could do something about, some of which were much harder to do something about. One, domestic violence is not really something we had a lot of ability to intervene directly on. The second was youth violence, and it was particularly distressing back then that there seemed to be a lot of young people who, every time they had some sort of a beef, they wound up going and finding a gun and shooting wildly all over the place, and occasionally they actually hit somebody. And we put some effort over the last couple of years into identifying programs for kids to get involved with that we thought might give them something to do with some adult supervision, with some team building, with some community building, and so on. And we had violence growing out of drug and other illegal activities. And then to a certain extent, there were some just sort of side private beefs that the Buck Squad, I guess Central Virginia Violence Interrupters, whatever they're being called now, was trying to deal with. I'm wondering, first of all, is that still essentially a fair breakdown of the kinds of things that are leading to violent crime? And is there a way to say, okay, in this area we've made some progress, in this area not so much, and how we're going to apportion our efforts?
Well, thank you for the question, sir. So I would say what we mostly are seeing now out of all of those groups is the settling of petty beefs with firearms, and just the accessibility of firearms now that we haven't seen in a very long time. I'm trying to think of the last time we had a shooting that wasn't involving a petty beef that maybe started on social media and then there was retribution. I mean, that's what we're seeing. And I think that's what complicates it when we start trying to look for the root causes of those issues. I mean, obviously we all know, violent crime is rooted in poverty, right? That's a big conversation, right, about housing and all those other things. But from where I stand as the police chief, my concern is these young individuals, their access to firearms, and using them to just settle what would just be a petty beef that now linger online for a very long time, and that's what we continue to see. We have not seen many shootings or violent crime associated with the drug distribution. We haven't seen that over the last 2 years. Does it exist? Sure, but not to the extent that we're seeing it with these petty beefs. So,
I remember about 20 years ago, that long before your time, Chief, at least
I don't know about that.
Here, your time here, let's put it that way. There was a major federal prosecution that I was involved with as representing somebody on the defense side, where there were a series of shootings and in one particular case a killing over in the Dice Street area that amounted to an ongoing beef between two different, call them gangs is probably overstating it, but two groups of people who were at least some tangentially involved in the drug trade. So there's a little bit of a carryover between the beefs and the drug activity. In that major prosecution, a whole lot of people wound up going to jail, and it seemed like that neighborhood calmed down. Is there any comparable thought that there's a particular neighborhood that requires additional law enforcement presence or some other more targeted law enforcement response, or is that what this is, an effort to avoid having to take it in that direction?
So, to answer your question, we monthly meet. You've been to one of the meetings, one of our CompStat meetings, where
Right.
we really look at the data, those hot spots, if you will, and what's there. Those hot spots have been the same hot spots for about 20 years. And so what we're really starting to do now is look for that hot spot within the hot spot. What's causing it to continue to be a hot spot? And what we find is typically an address, a specific situation that's happening, and trying to get to addressing that. The case that you're talking about, I'm assuming was more of like a RICO case or a racketeering type case in order to put something like that large. The challenge with what we're seeing now is, in order to put a case like that together, you have to show that these groups are profiting somehow for something, whether it be the drug trade or something else. These are groups, and again, I'm not sure I'd even call them gangs, that are beefing over what somebody called somebody on social media or someone said to someone's girlfriend. And so it makes it much more complicated to kind of identify the groups and go after them. But yeah, it's definitely a complex issue. To answer your question about a neighborhood, there's no specific neighborhood. I mean, we had a murder on Water Street the other day, so it's it's not, Charlottesville's small, so it could spill over anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also think that's what makes this new initiative of Project Safe Neighborhood different, is that it's much more individualized to the people who are having the most impact on violent crime. So it's even more like individualized, not necessarily to a neighborhood, but to an actual person. We'll be able to sit with them and say, what do you need? And so it even gets more and more specific to hopefully resolve the issue on violent crime.
Natalie, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Lloyd, anything else?
Yeah, I had one other question. About a year and a half ago, there was a major problem with some of the violence spilling into the schools, and I'm wondering how any of this, what the trends are right now with violence spilling into the schools. Is that situation abating? Are we getting any better? How's that working?
I don't have any of that data in front of me now, sir. I could probably get some of that, but I think we're in a better place today than we were this time last year when it comes to the schools. I feel safe saying that.
And I'll also add that the Department of Human Services has really invested in their partnership with Charlottesville City Schools. So we have a couple new initiatives going into the schools to work on pro-social skills, confidence building, self-esteem, conflict resolution, identity. These are gender-based groups, so there's a girls' circle and a boys' council, and so youth that are in Walker and Beaufort will be able to engage in that. Again, more focused on the prevention side of things, but again, we want to prevent the violence from happening. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Thank you.
So before you go, just a quick follow-up to that. So I saw Eric from the county schools. Are you kind of representing the city schools, or someone from city school central office is participating as well?
Not specifically in the implementation group right now. So this is just something that Human Services has, taken on as part of our investment on this initiative. So.
What's the process of a call-in meeting? How does that work?
How we got to it. So, so what we did, and it's kind of the framework, is we developed a matrix. So, and an individual is scored based on this matrix, and depends on your criminal history, your activities in the past. They met with our crime analysts or intelligence analysts that do this stuff every day. And so they're digging into police reports and warrants and all that stuff, right? So our analyst, Albemarle County's analyst, UVA, they all got together and put together this list and scored them on objective criteria. Like I said, criminal history, if you were involved in a gun violence incident or were caught with a firearm, stuff like that. And then once that score comes up, we developed a list and say we're going to take the top. And I don't know what the number is. Do you know what the number? How many at first?
I think the initial run through was 40, and then they additionally took out anybody that was under current investigation, currently incarcerated, or had been of good behavior for a certain period of time. They eliminated those from the bigger list of 40, and so the last number I heard was that it's hovering around 20.
Okay. So somewhere around 20 individuals. And then what'll happen is we'll decide how many of them we can actually facilitate by calling in, and we can call them in either through community partners, which we've been working with, or probation and parole, folks like that, ask them to come on in and sit them down and have this conversation with them and see what do they need, and basically just say, what is it do you need? What resources? Here are the resources. How can we help you?
So it's like an invitation to a meeting
Yep.
you can choose to accept.
Yep.
And these take place?
Do we know where they're going to happen yet?
The implementation group is working on like the scripts and the agenda and the
Okay.
location, and so we do want to be very thoughtful about the location, and so we haven't settled on one yet.
And it may not be a public location.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
We also, I think Chief mentioned, we've selected 2 wonderful facilitators that are very versed in restorative practices and working with folks who are struggling and need help and kind of getting through that way from restorative practices. So we're excited about the quality and caliber of our facilitators, because it's going to hinge on how they sort of provide that safe space.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then you had just said in response to Lloyd's question, it's hard to identify the groups to go after them. So how do we identify the people that we're trying to go after for this more positive?
That's the list.
So
That's that list.
So it's identifying them is doable. It's the
groups, and so when we
it's
talk
the
about
response that is easier to implement this than to go after them with.
we don't want to cast a wide net.
a
We want
charge
to be
of
really
some kind.
focused.
Yeah.
And when we talk about, are these gangs, if you will, they're groups. When I think of a gang, I think of a hierarchy, something like that. We're not necessarily seeing that. They're not as organized, and so not that would be a better thing. It would be easier, though, to identify them in those types of cases and what.
Right. These are just groups.
They're
of
groups
folks.
of kids. Yeah, groups of folks.
And then backing up to one of the goals that you mentioned, enhanced place-based programming and access to care. Can you just talk about what place-based programming entails, please? Thank you.
So one of it is as simple as making sure community members are informed and how people feel about the built environment that's around them. So it could be additional lights or sidewalks or things like that. That's place-based. But also having access, let's say, for one of the needs that we're hearing from community members is trauma-informed mental health supports and services. And so making sure that there's access in the communities that need it.
Like a mobile clinic?
That's correct. So like things that can be tailored to those places that have the highest need.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to appreciate that you said that the root cause of all this is poverty, which is housing and job security and food insecurity and all of those things that are broader and take more effort to fix, but things that we have some control over on a larger scale.
So I just had a couple of comments. The first one is that you listed some bullets, and the second one was like a list of different community activities that the youth can do. How is that updated, and who updates that? How's it going to be done?
Currently, the Equity Center is the holder of the website, and there are staff that can update it. And they also have a link that you can click on the website to say, "Hey, my organization isn't here. I'd like to be included," and they receive it at the Equity Center and are able to make those updates.
Got it. Yeah.
Is that website like cross-listed on the city and the county websites? Or do people think, oh, I have to go to the UVA Equity Center website to learn about it? Or if they
That's a good
search the
point.
city's
I don't
website?
think it's on mine at Human Services, but we can certainly work to that. I had also been thinking that now people are starting to think about what people are going to do with kids over the summer, and so now is a really good opportunity to maybe work with Afton's crew and the communications office and start. When it first got established, we had a press release and a news flash, but it might be time to work on that again.
I think having it as many accessible places as possible would probably be helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people still don't know that it exists. I met with another community leader, and they were very excited about it, and so they were going to put it on their newsletter, and they are Abundant Life, so they work with a lot of families and folks in the Prospect neighborhood, and so we'll make sure that we elevate that website.
Yeah, it also, I think, makes it feel like more of a city-county partnership as well, where if it's, I mean, we appreciate that you're hosting the website, but if we are cross-listing and sending people there, then it also feels more like a city and county program. Cool, thank you.
So my next question or comment is like the Attorney General or the state and the feds input in this. What do you see? First, have you heard any discussion that's being defunded or curtailed? But even if it's not, if it stays as it is, I'm trying to get an idea of like when we have these call-in meetings, like what do you see as the purpose? I know the money is good, but
Well, yeah, the money, I mean, obviously that's a piece of it. And again, the resources as well are a big piece. I was asked this recently about with everything kind of going on, what's the impact going to be with the U.S. Attorney's Office and all that. I will say the folks who we work with at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we've been working with for years through multiple administrations. It's the same line level career prosecutors that know this community, who live in this community, who you all know. And so I don't suspect any of that's going to change, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't. So, we're going to do our work the way our community expects us to. And so we've talked about it. I've talked to our local prosecutors as well, and we're still moving forward. I also want to thank Ben Allen and his folks at UVA. There's a lot of work that was done, like things that had to be done here, and that and they really they picked it up and helped us tremendously. So I really want to appreciate that.
So I just want to add, I'm glad Ben is here. When I was one of the original co-chair of that university community task force, and when we talked about having a university more engaged in a concrete way in the community, kind of having a front door to the community. And at the time, there was talk of so many studies, and different schools and departments were doing studies for kids in West Haven and Friendship Court, but no one really knew. And so we needed something like this to kind of like bring all these kind of resources together to kind of make sure it makes sense and wasn't negative impact in the community. So it's really great to see and hear that things are actually happening. So it's great. My last comment or question is the meetings that you have. And so, I've been in this community enough to know that we have to be careful, but when we have these meetings, that sometimes only those who have the opportunity or privilege enough to come out. And so sometimes you have to be proactive and go out to sometimes you can go right outside some of these meetings a few blocks away and get just as much. Every time I go walking, I get a lot of information on what's going on. So sometimes you have to, no matter how well advertised we put it and get input, we still may not get the input that we need.
Yeah, and that's what I was mentioning about the diversity and how we get the word out about Project Safe Neighborhood is not just the community meetings, but having our partners that are already established in neighborhoods and community leaders that already have meetings going on. We go there rather than inventing a new thing for someone to have to find resources to attend. So we're plugging in those places.
Yeah. So, some people already have their regular neighborhood meetings, I'm thinking of FAR, they have a really well-attended meetings, and neighborhood association, Black Professional Networks, they already have to get some time in or whatever in their meeting. So, great. Any other questions or comment? You guys are rocking and rolling on this. Thank you so much.
What's the time frame or the term of the Project Safe Neighborhood grant?
It's not like there's not like a specific grant. There's multiple grants you can get, but there's no time frame.
Okay.
I mean,
so this is a partnership that we have that we're going to continue doing.
That's correct.
It's a designation, and the police departments, UVA and Albemarle in the city, were designated in August of this past year, right? So once you get your designation, it could potentially open up funding streams. Currently, right now, we're able to do these activities as a region.
Got it.
With what we have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Now you.
Now I'm up, right? It's okay. Okay, so like I said back in, I think it was September when we talked about this. Is that right? Back in September?
Yeah.
I would come back and kind of give an update as to the rollout of the Flock ALPR program and kind of where we are and as we move forward. After this meeting with you all, we will be taking this on the road as we promised the community as well, to the different community groups that we went to when we initially rolled this out. Since September, when I stood before you and talked about this, there's a lot been said about ALPRs on the state level. There's legislation, draft legislation now, sponsored by Delegate Herring, and a lot of things kind of going on. And so I am happy to say, and I'll get into our policies here in a minute, but that we're being looked at as almost a model. They've looked at stuff from our policies when drafting guardrails on the state level, and the draft legislation that is out there, our current policy meets all of those guardrails that are in that draft legislation and then some. And so we're in a pretty good place. Just a reminder, these are the locations where our Flock cameras are up. There are 10 of them, and these are the different locations. A few policy highlights, and I'll get into how we got here to our policy. Right now, we have a 7-day retention period. It is the shortest within the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our system access is restricted to Virginia law enforcement only. In our policy, and when there's an alert, this statement is put up there as an ALPR alert, including an alert by the ECC, does not create reasonable suspicion to justify a traffic stop or a detention or an individual. The officer must develop independent reasonable suspicion for that stop, and that verbiage was taken out of the ACLU's model policy recommendation. And then our ALPR system audits shall be conducted on a monthly basis. This is our transparency portal, so anybody can go to this. If you just Google Charlottesville Police Flock, this will come up. It's a two-piece, but you can see it shows our retention period, number of cameras, what it is, what it isn't, what it's shared with. This is the second half of it because it's a lot. It shows hot list alerts, vehicles detected the last 30 days. This is as of last week. I want to say I pulled this off on Thursday. Hot list hits, and then searches in the last 30 days. It also has a link to our policy that anybody can see, along with the contract that anyone can see. And again, this is open to the public. Just a little background on the implementation process. After we stood before you and talked about this program, we began our contract negotiations with Flock. That contract was reviewed by us, the city attorney, and the city manager. After that was finalized, the policy was developed, That was reviewed by us, the PCOB Executive Director, the City Attorney, and the City Manager. After that happened, then we trained all of staff. All of our sworn staff has been trained, along with the Executive Director of the PCOB. And then the PCOB Executive Director has been granted access to all police systems required to audit that. And that means our records management system, our Axon body camera system. They've received CJIS training, which is Criminal Justice Information Systems training, which is required for anybody, including police officers, that we give access to see confidential, sensitive information, and then full access to our FLOC system.
A quick question, does CJIS,
CJIS.
is that done like locally, online? How,
It's
what is
training that the Virginia State Police puts on. It's a web-based
Right,
thing though.
mhm.
But like anybody who has access even to our like record section in the police department has to attend CJIS, the CJIS training. Just talks about the privacy of records. It's a requirement by the
Like
state.
how we have to go through FOIA training. those sort of
Exactly,
things.
yeah. So a few of examples since the program's been into effect. You know, the big one obviously is multiple stolen vehicles recovered, and here's why I feel like that's important when I talk to folks in the community who have their vehicles stolen. Every day their car's not recovered, they can't go to work. It's a big deal to get your car stolen. And so that's been one of the biggest things. There was a shooting on Hardy Drive on a playground where someone was shot in the leg. We had a description of the vehicle. Was able to punch it into the system. We were able to identify a tag to that vehicle, ultimately identifying the person and suspect who involved in that shooting and make an arrest. Another shooting on Hardy Drive, or 2 stolen vehicles were identified related to this incident. The vehicles were recovered, and in that, based on flock hits, those evidence was found within those vehicles when they were recovered. It led to 3 arrests in those shootings. This other one was a missing child who never showed up to Summit Elementary School. The vehicle information of possible whereabouts of the child, like maybe all the family members, like what kind of vehicles does family members have? Let's see, maybe they got into a vehicle with a family member. Obviously, you can imagine the family was frantic, and we were able to ultimately identify the vehicle, locate the vehicle, and ultimately locate the missing child who was not in harm. And then another hit, a vehicle related to a homicide in another jurisdiction was alerted in the city. Ultimately, it was identified, stopped, and information was passed on to that jurisdiction for their case. It's been, as you can see, it's been very helpful. Those are just a few situations that I can talk about. It's also been really useful to see the system, how it tracks where our stolen vehicles are going to and from. They're traveling to areas such as Lynchburg, Harrisonburg, Waynesboro, and it gives us a good idea and intelligence of what persons could be responsible for many of these thefts. And so that's been helpful in investigating these cases. Hit and runs, domestics. We've had domestics where the suspect may have fled in a vehicle. We get the tag number. We're able to punch it into the system and locate that vehicle real time when it alerts in our cameras, therefore taking a violent or a dangerous domestic abuser off the street quickly so they can't come back to the home. And then for our shooting investigations, again, due to the ongoing nature of a lot of them, I can't talk about specifics, but I will tell you that this system is used in every one of our shootings. It's been used in a recent homicide. We are using it, and it's been fruitful in a way that allows us to make progress in these cases much faster, especially when we're talking about dangerous individuals out on the streets. Some guardrails. So like I said, Charlottesville ARPRs, we currently meet or exceed all draft legislation guardrails. The draft legislation actually allows for 30 days of retention, and we haven't asked for that. We don't need that right now. The 7 days is working for us, and so I'm proud to say that our policies will withstand the legislation, and is actually much more restrictive than that draft legislation, which is bipartisan, that is working its way through the General Assembly as we speak. It's going to cross over tomorrow from the House to the Senate. With that, questions?
Does the county have this technology as well, or are they relying on us?
So they can't yet, and here's why. Their roads are maintained by the state, and so for them to have flock or ALPRs on roads that are maintained by the state, it's actually in that draft legislation that will allow them to get a permit through the state if they want to use them. So right now they don't. There are some private businesses in the county that have these. There's a few that I know of.
Got it. Thank you.
So, before I go, Lloyd, do you have anything?
No, I'll just say I've been curious and concerned from the civil libertarian perspective about the whole flock system, but I think that the guardrails, I voted to do this in large part because of the guardrails, and I'm glad to hear that the guardrails are apparently satisfactory for your purposes. It seems to me that they are reasonably calculated to avoid some of the worst case scenarios that people have been throwing out about the way in which flock systems might be used or misused. And so I'm, cautiously optimistic, I guess is the best way to put it, is cautiously optimistic that the system will continue to work satisfactorily without being unduly intrusive.
I agree, sir.
Yeah. Natalie?
Hang on, finishing my notes. Yes, where was my, at the beginning you said ALPR system audits should be conducted on a monthly basis. What does an audit entail?
So it tells a few things, but the big one is, so if an officer goes into the system and queries a license plate or a tag that they're looking for, they have to put a case number associated with it. And so when you do an audit, so an officer would just randomly pull up, I'm not sure what that, does that mean?
Yeah, you hear it too. I was wondering if it was
Like a
just me.
buzzing going. I thought it-
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
This is me.
So you would pull up the case number. First of all, make sure that case number that the officer is associating with that search is legit. That it's, so the idea is that it has to be used for a legitimate law enforcement purpose, and so that confirms that. That's one example of the audit of the system and doing them randomly.
Got it.
And that's why the PCOB executive director needed access to our records management system and the body worn and our Axon system, so they could pull up that report, they could pull up the stop, they could watch the stop, they could see all of it. So they have the same access that I have.
Okay, and so, sorry, you might have said this, the audit is done by PCOB?
The executive director does audits, but we also do audits as well.
Okay.
To clarify, the PCOB executive director has the authority to review as desired.
Got it.
And I can say they did, she did the audit this past Friday.
You have any more?
Not right now.
Uh,
This presentation, is that gonna get sent to us? It wasn't in the
Wasn't in the
packet,
packet.
was it?
Well, I can get it to you.
It might have
That's
been,
fine.
but that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Chief Conscious, have there been any hiccups that, anticipated, unanticipated that, that just happened that you?
No.
Okay. So, you gave a couple of examples, one of a missing child, one of a shooting that you were able to. Can you give me an idea, like if we didn't have Flock, what that investigation or would have looked like?
Well, it's hard to give a hypothetical.
Yeah, I know.
But so the shooting, right? I mean, the locations of where these are. So
Yeah.
the shooting up on Hardy Drive on the playground. We had a description of a vehicle, and I don't remember the exact description.
Right.
Let's just say it was a green two-door. I say green because you're sure.
Yeah.
Green two-door car,
Mhm.
right? That's all we have. We don't have a tag number, okay? But we have a flock camera 10th and Main Street, right? So as that, if it happens late at night, not a lot of cars are on the road. And so we can look and see what green two-door went through there around this time frame and get a tag number. And then look that up and see, okay, let's find out, if this person was there and involved. And that's what happened. And so if we didn't have that, we may not have solved it as quickly. A stolen vehicle. Someone had their car stolen. The officers are on scene taking that report. What's your tag number? They can go in and say, okay, at this time, your car went through this camera at like 1 in the morning. So we know it was stolen around this time. So now we can also go ahead and look for video cameras in the area that people may have around and narrow it down to that time frame and be able to maybe even identify a picture of a suspect who may have stolen that person's car. So it does a lot, and it provides evidence to, at trial in the courts. So yeah, it's invaluable.
Good.
And look, I know the conversation around the civil liberties and privacy expectations. I'm sensitive to that, and so it's on the top of my mind. And I could tell you, even as I'm involved in this conversation in Richmond, and at the state level. And I don't always make my peers happy when I say 7 days is good for us, but that's what our community expects, and that's one thing I keep hammering home is that when you put something like this into place, how you do it in the process to get there matters.
Yeah.
And I think we got that right. It was a 1-year process to do that.
I would like to make kind of a parallel statement based on your presentation before, where you acknowledged that poverty is the driving force behind all of these things. In a similar way, like you mentioned, stolen cars mean people can't get to work. Well, that's because we have a car-dependent system. If people didn't need to rely on their cars to get around, because we have a more robust transit network, bike lanes, sidewalks, all of those things. A broader view, those could help people not be so car dependent, also reduce vehicle theft and vehicles and that sort of thing. So something we have control over, but is a bigger project that kind of trickles down to whether or not we need a program like this.
I would love to get to a point that we don't need it. One day.
Yeah, I was reading in the paper maybe a couple of weeks ago where that guy who stole all those bikes, he had like, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000 worth of bikes. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, people will find a way to take a lot of things that don't belong to them.
Yeah. Just a lot, when we think about things in terms of tools for violence, car violence is one of those things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. Any other questions or comments? This is, thank you so much. This has been very helpful.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'll be back, because I said I'd come back a few times a year, so
yes,
we'll do this again.
Good. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
And to confirm, because the agreement that was made in issuing this is that there's no objection for continuing the use of the FLOT system at this time.
Not from this person, not from me.
When
Not
does
at
the
this time.
agreement run out?
September or October.
Yeah, I think it's sometime in the fall.
And so it was the first year was funded, and then if we would like to continue using the program, council has to vote to appropriate those funds.
I would say that I have to have that conversation with the chief before the budget closes, but that's part of the question, making sure that the funds are available to continue should future reports continue to satisfy you for continued operation.
Yeah. I continue to be in support of it. Lloyd?
No, I continue to be in support of it.
Did you want to state your position now? Or you
Not
just
at
not?
the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Chief
you all.
Cutchess.
Appreciate it.
So, Sam, is that it? Are we?
That's
can
it
we
for
go?
the
Okay.
work session.
So, Brian, can you read the closed session?
Pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code, I move that this city council close this open meeting and convene in the closed session as authorized by the Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 to interview prospective candidates for the Police Civilian Oversight Board.
Second.
Got it. Second. Can we vote, please? Okay,
That's
we're
a
in
yes
closed
for
session.
me.
We will be back at 6:30. Thank you.
We each get to have seconds for dinner.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we kind of.